Welcome to your online course on environmental impact assessment. Okay, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're going to transform these foundational definitions from just, boring textbook terms into a really dynamic cause and effect life cycle. Because understanding the language of EIA, it isn't just about passing a test. It's about giving you the actual tools to analyze how human development interacts with the natural world. And getting a solid grip on this right now is absolutely crucial for your success in this coursework and honestly, way beyond it.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to hit the environment and projects, defining impacts, the impact statement, and wrap up with prevention, mitigation, and conservation. We'll see exactly how these interlocking pieces build the whole EIA framework.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the environment and projects, and establishing our baseline.
Let's start with the baseline of our narrative by defining the actual space where all of this takes place. When we say environment, you probably just picture trees and rivers, right? But it is so much bigger than that. The environment encompasses the natural, social, and cultural systems where human activities happen. It includes human health and welfare right alongside the built environment. In the literature, you'll see researchers like Landon, Collar, and Maynard really emphasize the importance of soil and plant analysis to understand this health, while Ramteka and Moga dive into methodologies for water analysis. It's a highly complex, interconnected web of air, water, soil, flora, and fauna.
And that leads to our absolute core theme here. The environment is incredibly dynamic. Changes in one component don't exist in a vacuum. They ripple across others. A drop in water quality doesn't just stay in the river, it can ripple straight into community health issues or completely alter local plant life. Recognizing this massive complexity is literally step one of any assessment.
Now, into this perfectly balanced web drops our catalyst, the project. A project acts as the disruptor to that pre-existing baseline we just talked about. But notice, it's not always a brand new skyscraper or a massive new highway. A project can be a major expansion of an existing facility, a significant alteration, or even just picking up work that had previously been discontinued.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining those environmental impacts, or as I like to call it, the ripple effect.
The crucial thing here is understanding exactly what happens when that project catalyst smashes into our baseline environment. You see, in the professional field of EIA, we don't just say a project has effects. We specifically look for impacts. An impact is any deviation, any change at all from the baseline situation that is directly caused by the project's activities. That baseline is simply what the environment would look like if the project had never existed. So if the project alters human health, messes with biophysical conditions, or even impacts cultural heritage sites, that deviation is our impact.
Now, these impacts basically split into two main buckets, direct and indirect. Direct impacts are the super immediate, obvious consequences. Think of a newly constructed factory. The smoke pouring out of its smokestacks is a direct impact. Indirect impacts, though, they sneak up on you through secondary processes. Think of indirect impacts as the health issues a local community might face 5 years down the line because that factory slowly altered the local water quality.
And hey, it's really easy to just assume all environmental impacts are bad, right? But we also have to weigh positive impacts against the negative ones. A project might generate highly beneficial outcomes. We're talking vital new infrastructure or a massive boost in local employment. But obviously, we have to carefully balance those positive outcomes against the negative consequences, like pollution or habitat loss.
So how did decision-makers actually make sense of all these deviations? Well, they use a structured framework to prioritize impacts by analyzing specific attributes. They're asking, what's the magnitude of the change? How long is the duration? Is it a significant shift? They also look really closely at reversibility, like, can the environment bounce back from this? And finally, timeframes are absolutely critical. Is the impact a short-term headache, a long-term generational issue, or is it cumulative, where multiple different projects are all piling on and intensifying the environmental stress in one single region?
Let's move on to Section 3, the environmental impact statement, where we document all these ripples. How in the world do we systematically document all these complex deviations, magnitudes, and timeframes before they actually happen? Well, enter the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. This is a comprehensive, highly transparent tool used in laws all over the globe, like the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, in the US. It's designed to help governments, the public, and developers truly understand the consequences of major actions. It's all about balancing development needs with environmental protection, ensuring we make fully informed decisions before a single shovel even hits the dirt.
But listen, don't think of the EIS as just some thick, boring document sitting on a bureaucrat's desk. It's a sequential, living process. It starts by identifying the project's purpose and need, basically, why are we even doing this? Then, it outlines alternatives, and this is key. The alternatives almost always include the option of doing nothing at all. You need that for a baseline comparison. From there, it dives deep into analyzing direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts, all the way through to proposing mitigation measures.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question for any environmental professional taking this course. Once you've documented all these potential disasters, how do we actively manage these impacts before they occur?
That leads us perfectly to Section 4, Prevention, Mitigation, and Conservation, what we call the Solutions Triad.
Let's break down the 3 ultimate management goals of the EAI framework. First up, the Holy Grail, environmental prevention. This is our forward-looking approach. Instead of rushing in with a mop after the spill, prevention focuses on identifying risks way in advance. We're talking about adopting cleaner production technologies, using renewable energy, or designing zero-waste systems from day one. Stopping harm at the source is, for sure, always going to be more effective, way less costly, and significantly more sustainable than trying to piece a degraded ecosystem back together later.
But let's be real. Complete prevention just isn't always possible. Sometimes a project absolutely must proceed and certain impacts are just unavoidable. When that happens, we pivot to environmental impact mitigation. This is where we aggressively step in to control and manage those adverse effects.
Mitigation basically comes in 3 actionable flavors. First, you can minimize the impact by scaling down or completely redesigning the project. Second, you can repair the environment. So, say you have to clear land for a pipeline, you commit to actively replanting native vegetation once the pipe is in the ground. Or third, you compensate for the damage by creating or acquiring new environments. A classic example is a developer donating a massive tract of pristine wetlands to a public land trust to offset the wetlands their project just paved over.
Ultimately, the whole shebang, every term, every impact statement, every mitigation tactic we've discussed builds toward one grand goal: environmental conservation. Conservation is the responsible use and management of our natural resources. It's the act of making careful, highly calculated choices today so we can balance vital human needs, like agriculture, keeping the lights on, and industry, with the long-term health and stability of our biodiversity. So, as you apply these definitions to the rest of your course, I really want you to chew on this final thought. Ask yourself, as emerging environmental professionals, are we just checking regulatory boxes to assess a project's impacts, or are we actively using these tools to design a resilient, thriving, and sustainable future for the generations that follow us? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I cannot wait to see how you apply these foundational concepts in the modules ahead.